What is up, Wizards fans? Welcome to another Believe in Wizards podcast. I'm Modderno. He's Jahadi White. This is where we talk about the Wizards, and there's not like a ton of major news this week. The big deal, I think, was the introductory press conference to announce Brian Keefe as the official new head coach of the Wizards, and I thought, mostly kind of lip service quotes. We'll get into it a little bit here, but still a few interesting takeaways we want to get into. But just first, as always, Jahadi, how you doing? How's your week? Everything good?
Oh yeah, everything's good, man. Typical week. Basketball, kids.
That's good.
That's how it goes.
Any big AAU trips coming up or anything here?
Well, it's have one in Kansas City and one in Chicago.
Okay.
It's just live.
A little easier commute for you guys to those ones, right?
Right now, especially in this live period. So, that's big for the boys.
Yeah.
Big for the players. This live period where all the college coaches come out.
Yeah, you hear that with the Danny Hurley potentially going to the Lakers thing. It's like, well, this is a pretty big month for college coaches and stuff too, because they're on the road a lot. So this is a tough month to be kind of
they are. And that type of thing is unique when you see a coach like that. And he's like, well, is he going to be here or not? But it seems like the Lakers offer him an opportunity that he can't refuse. It seems like they're trying to make him the new Pat Riley over there.
Yeah, exactly.
Put everything in his hands and you create the culture.
Yep. Just on that real quick. I didn't mean to bring this up, but it's interesting. Like, he's the guy you see on the sidelines that's in the refs. He's yelling, not like yelling at the players, but he yells to the players. And like, he pushed Cam Spencer, his own player, during a national championship game onto the right side of the court. Like, I don't know, treating LeBron James that way, I don't think is going to work. I mean, you've seen him coach college games. Like, do you think his sort of style is going to fit with that group of players?
It's for him to go to the next level. It's got to give and take. It got to be a give and take. Mm-hmm. Well, first thing for him is you have to have that undeniable, just that energy and
sure,
kind of full of piss and vinegar like him. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's certain things like pushing the player on the other side that probably won't work.
Yeah, can't do that to AD. Yeah.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, if you have to, you have to, because you have to be that type of coach. You can't be the typical NBA coach that caters. And so all the way down the line, I would rather him be himself and mm-hmm. be the type of coach he is at UConn. Sure. And rattle the few players, and a few players get upset and want to leave, then mm-hmm. him changing that all. Yeah. But with the NBA game, you have to choose what you're going to change about yourself. Just mm-hmm. you can't change the full of fire, the big stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's going to be so interesting to me. Like, I mean, LeBron has said nice things about them and how they run their offense and all kinds of stuff. So presumably this is pretty well vetted, with him. And then probably AD, I would imagine too, but he's going to have to meet them in the middle. And LeBron probably says he wants a decent amount of accountability and things like that too. But I feel like you have to message things differently to pro athletes than you do college players.
You do, because it's grown men.
Yeah.
You do. You can't treat them like college players where you have your thumb under their head. But if you are honest and call them out, and you don't cater so much to the main player, mm-hmm. which is, LeBron is old. Some days he may have to sit out of practice. Older, not old, but older. Yeah. Some days he may have to sit out of practice. It is what it is. Mm-hmm. But it's about accountability. And if he holds LeBron to the same accountability as he holds everybody else, then they be like, okay, well, it shows how much the players, it's not the star players, how much they can get away with, right? So if now, like Pop would tell Tim Duncan, hey, I'm going to curse you out today. I'm going to be on your ass all week. Mm-hmm. And I'm not doing it, and you just have to sit here and accept it. But understand this is what I'm about to do to you. And I'm not doing it to Tim Duncan for Tim Duncan.
Right, I'm doing everybody else's benefit.
So I can have whole reigns with the rest of my team and have to control the rest of my team. Mm. So if he takes that same approach, it's fine. But, just as long as him and LeBron have that understanding.
Makes sense. All right, I'm going to come back to this, but first, our ad reads brought to you by Stateside Vodka and their Surfside Hard Iced Teas, hard lemonades, hard every flavor you can think of, and BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your summer sports this season, from MLB, golf, MMA, obviously NBA and NHL playoffs, WNBA if you want to do that. Get the latest stats, news, and scores available from your favorite teams and the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. So just on that thread for a minute there, like we talk a lot about like credibility for a coach with players, and sometimes a former player may have it or a really well-established coach. Like for a team like that, you got to have some amount of credibility. And does winning 2 national titles at the college level carry the same credibility as, he's never coached in the NBA or anything like that? So do they offset, or how would you look at that as a player coming in with that guy being your new coach?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I mean, even if it's Coach K coming in, which everybody knows K is a respect factor, but you're a college coach. This is the NBA. This is different. So NBA player won't look at a college coach and say, "Oh," they actually kind of look at him as less.
That's how it seems. Yeah.
But what would help Hurley out, and it seems like this is what they're going to do, is they're saying, "Hey, you're not going anywhere. We're giving you a long-term contract that's making pretty much that you control everything basketball."
Sure.
Right. Other than probably the GM. Right. But anything under the GM, you get to decide, you get to pick, you get to run, and you're going to be here 10 to 11 years. So now when a player comes in, he doesn't get to pull ranks.
He's not the short timer here.
Not the short timer where I can go to the gym and say, "Hey man, we gotta get rid of this." No, that's no can do. There's nothing. So now it's just between, okay, now a coach can look and say, "Hey, I'm gonna probably be here longer than you."
Right. Yeah. You gotta. It's my way or the highway, really.
So now it's my way or the highway. And when you set the culture that way, you can bypass me to Jenny Buss if you want to, or bypass me to whoever if you want to. Whatever team it is, but nothing's gonna happen. I'm so secure. I have a contract that says I'm here for 10 years.
Yep.
So either you're gonna fall in line, or we're gonna have a disagreement. We're gonna be butting heads the entire season. And I'm stubborn. I'm stern. I'm decisive and I'm stern. So, and I'm full of energy and full of fire myself.
Yeah,
So,
I think they might like that kind of vibe back of like someone that's just as enthusiastic about it as they are. Like certain coaches are kind of low energy. Like that's not a guy you have to worry about that with.
Right. Yeah. And it's right. And the coach that'll get on you, like a coach that's going to coach the players.
Yep.
Right. A coach that's going to challenge you. And a coach that gets to create his culture. It's a difference between creating. I get to pick some guys on my coaching staff.
Sure.
Other than, hey, I get the reins to create the culture of how I want this entire thing, the system. I get to create the system.
Yeah, makes sense. The other interesting piece of this too is, I think by all accounts, the UConn offense that everybody's talked so highly of for the last 2 years was largely put in place by Luke Murray, one of their top 2 assistants, Bill Murray's son, for any comedy fans out there, which is random.
Wow,
but
really?
Yeah, which is like, oh, okay, it's a pretty different career path. But I wonder if he would take Luke Murray with him. It seems their associate head coach, Kamani Young, might stay and be the head coach if Hurley leaves. But I think Luke is like really the kind of creative offensive mind there. So I think that would be unique to see what he can come up with and the different ways they could use LeBron and AD and guys like that. So I'll be interested to see if they can kind of steal him away too.
Well, I'm sure he'd take him. I mean, if that's
it
his
would make
right-hand
sense.
guy, that's the workings behind the scenes that's really making things to create. He's creating the creator of the system. You got to take him with you. And what it seems like is what they're going to offer him. He has the option to take anybody he wants to. So, most likely he's going to wipe out that whole staff at UConn.
Yeah. I think maybe the only guy that would stay is like the top assistant if he's going to get the job. And if not, he's probably coming with two. And maybe they bring in a few guys with NBA experience to bolster it
Yep,
out.
exactly.
All right. So that's a good segue. Let's move into our own new coaching hire here in Washington. So they had the press conference for Brian Keefe. Got a lot of commentary from Will Dawkins I thought was interesting. The first place I want to start out with, though, Jahadi, is I think Chris Miller asked this question directly, but they asked Will Dawkins, like, okay, who else interviewed? You said there was an actual, coaching search process that took place here. Who else can you tell us? And Dawkins basically just said he wouldn't say names, but that there was like a full process, and they didn't, go into it with any foregone conclusions. It wasn't like Keefe from day one, that they conducted a thorough search and this is the guy who won out. I personally think that's bullshit. Like, I don't really care, but I don't buy that. Oh, they did their, super deep dives and due diligence on a bunch of names, and we just didn't hear any leaking of any of these interviews. Like, if they had done that, we would have heard something about at least one other guy, them having some talks with. So I don't know, maybe they did a few kind of light introductory phone calls with some guys to be able to say, yeah, we talked to other names. But I think, like we've talked about, this was Brian Keefe's job. Basically, the writing was kind of on the wall here that this is the dude they want, which is fine with me. It's just, why wouldn't you just say that? So I don't know. Before we kind of get too far into it, I guess what's your take on kind of that, take from me?
Well, listen to Dawkins talk a lot lately, when he's in interviews or when he's, having to speak to media. You can tell he's very suggestive with his words.
Yeah.
But also very optimistic with his words, and it's like, okay, well, he doesn't show any cracks in the armor, even though, everything has cracks somewhere.
Sure.
Right. So I'm starting to learn and listen to him when he talks. And it's always very positive, optimistic.
Yep.
And, so I consider that when I consider what he said. Another thing is, last year, you kind of, at the end of the season last year, you kind of figured that Keefe was going to be here this year. But And the first thing I heard this summer was, hey, we're still in rebuilding process. We're still, we might not have another great season. We're still trying to get another high draft pick next year. So, which means, okay, it's kind of, I wouldn't call it a sitting duck phase, but it's like Keefe may be in a coach holding phase.
Yeah.
Right. We're going to hold him here. And that's tough to say.
There's only so many people that want that situation.
Yeah, that's tough to say to a coach. That's tough to say to the fans. Right now, so yeah, you can say, hey, we did go through a coaching, vet some other coaches. But in reality is, you already just told me that these two, this season and maybe next season, is still going to be one of those that we're going to be rebuilding and trying to, so we may not have great seasons. So again, why waste another coach's time?
Yeah, that's fair.
But I don't think they think less of Keefe to put him in that position. I think they think that he can be a great coach. He has so much experience. He's been under Pop. Yeah. He's been under a lot of great coaches, and he's been in the NBA a long time. And not only that, he was a very good college basketball player. Right, so he went to UC Irvine, and then great player there. Then went to UNLV, another good player there. So he's coached under some of the best in the game. So I don't think they're just putting him as a coach holding position.
He's not a placeholder. I'm with you.
Right, but also, he still has to prove his go if he can be a head coach. Sure. So now, if not, we didn't waste our time with interviewing other head coaches for this position. This is guys we can get later. So I don't think, like you said, it's not placeholder. It's definitely still evaluation.
Sure.
But just, to me, why would you say, hey, we got our guy. Yeah. We this season, these other seasons coming up may not be as good. So since we already put a guy there last year at the end of the season, how about we just keep him here for now? And to me, that's better to say that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's more of a ringing endorsement. Like you could say, hey, we went into this, he wasn't a foregone conclusion, but we started the process with him. And when we really thought about it, this is just really the right guy for us for the right time and the right situation. So we didn't really need to bring in a bunch of other dudes. To me, that's like more of a we've got our guys back here. This is our guy than like, oh yeah, we talked to some other guys and we eventually circled back around to Keefe. Like I know they're not really saying that, but the hey, this was our dude. Just I don't know. Maybe that would frustrate some fans to know that they didn't consider a bunch of other options. I just think if you're going to say we interviewed other guys, I would have liked to have heard some amount about what the other guys were. Otherwise, I just kind of don't believe you. Like,
true. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense, but it wouldn't. In this case, it wouldn't make sense to even interview other guys.
Yeah, I think it's fine. And
then what do you do? What do you do? Find out the guys they interviewed and go talk to them and what? Because in the end of the day, we understand what the game plan is.
Yeah, I'm with you. I know we've had some questions and it's coming up here in the chat a little bit from Mike too. Like if they didn't think some of these other top candidates would actually seriously consider the job, why bother expending the energy to take them? But if you're Chris Quinn and you're a top assistant in Miami and Spo's not anywhere near retiring, you want a head coaching job. I think he would take a thing like that. And I think one of the things that we as fans sort of downplay sometimes is coaches like challenges. Like they want to prove they've got egos too. Like if you can come over and rebuild the Wizards and stick around, like fans were looking at this as like, no one wants our shitty job. I think as coaches, you're like, oh, okay, like that's a big challenge. Like I can take that on. Like I'll make a name if I can turn this team around a little bit. So I think these top assistants, this is actually probably a pretty appealing job. Like you're not stealing away certain guys, but if you're like an established Mike Budenholzer or something, like I could see why that guy doesn't want to come to a rebuilding team. But I've never been a head coach before. This would actually be a pretty good opportunity, and you're working with a good, competent front office. Like I don't think it's that bad of an option as maybe some people are kind of looking at this.
No, I don't think it's a bad option at all. And I know what I see the front office I'm working on. To me right now with this front office and understanding where they're trying to go, the Wizards' job for a head coach would be very appealing.
Yeah.
So now as a coach, I also have to look at, hey, what am I working with? What do I have to work with? Are they expecting me to work miracles, or not? So you still got to protect yourself.
Right.
But from the top down, it would be very appealing to a coach.
I think so. It Never Makes No Sense says it's much more fun for fans to hear reporting on this, but it's probably better for organizations to be quiet. I think you're probably right on that, of keeping kind of a close to the vest sort of thing. And that's been the OKC model. So I think we're going to have to get used to that around here. But the other comment from Azana in the chat said, I noticed that they keep referring to the future of the team. From the sound of things, they don't expect to start winning or anything for another 2 years or so. Yes, everyone listening to this should be fully buckled down and expecting this is not going to be an overnight thing. They're not going to rush this.
You got to strap in.
Yep, exactly. We're in this for the long haul, and there won't be shortcuts, which is actually a good thing, and that should be exciting to hear. But their comments definitely talked about there were two main themes with the Brian Keefe commentary here, and it was relationship building and what a people person he is, but also the player development aspect. So we're going to draft a bunch of young guys and we're going to build them up, and Brian Keefe is the guy to do that for us. So that seemed to be a large motivation for them to bring him in.
It is, but I read that too about how he was with Kevin Durant, how he was with James Harden, how he was with Westbrook, how he made them better players. Great. But he's now the head coach. Right.
Yep.
So as
got to be people around him. Yeah.
Yeah, assistant coach. Fine. But as assistant coach, you have time to do that. That's part of your job.
Sure.
As a head coach, you don't have time to
not in the trenches
to develop individual players.
Right.
So now what?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you create a system within your coaching staff to make sure that that's your number one priority?
Mm-hmm.
But that, and then again, that's still not you.
Yep.
Like it seemed like reading about him, he was naturally that way.
Yeah, he had
He
the
was
gift for
naturally,
doing that.
I'm going to sacrifice me to make everything else around me better.
Mm-hmm.
Every individual on my team, every player on my team better individually than that we makes us better as a whole.
Yep.
So if he can implement that as being the culture for that his assistant coaches do, then great.
Mm-hmm.
But is that but are they naturally him? You know,
That's a really good point. And last year before the season, they talked about, oh, we're bringing in this whole new player development staff. We had 5 or 6 names of guys who have been like player development guys for other good aspiring teams. But then we also heard, other than David Vanderpool, like they cleared house. So you brought in all those guys last year. Are any of them back? Like, so if we did such a great job of bolstering PD staff last year, are we going to have to redo that again? Does that mean it didn't work and we brought in the wrong people the last time? Like, I think that's going to be really interesting to just see who he fills out the rest of his staff with.
Yeah, it will be, and who's available, because now it's about availability too.
That's a good point.
So yeah, that's the interesting part. Like, who are you going to build your staff out with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, good call. A couple of the quotes here, like I said, Dawkins really talked about like relationship building, and he's a player's coach. Both Greg Finberg of Bolts Forever and Bijan Todd of Monumental Sports had a lot of the really good quotes from this, and just pulled a couple from both of their reporting. But it said, when I think of Brian at his core, he's someone who connects with people, who's someone who's a teacher. He's proven in motivating people. That was Will Dawkins. Dawkins also said he's genuine. He invests in people. He puts himself last. He puts the players first, and we're excited about that. That was the piece you pulled a second ago there, Jahadi, which I thought was good, of just putting people first. I said he has a unique ability to see people and things for what they can be, not for where they are or who they are right now. And when you think of our phase of the team is right now, that's vital. So again, kind of committed to the rebuild here. But I also think that's interesting. And I wonder how much they'll kind of like, like as they're going to start to do these player workouts and things like that, sounds like Keefe would be a great guy to have. Like sometimes coaches take a little bit of a backseat in the pre-draft process. It depends on the team and the coach and the structure. But hey, if he's got a great eye for what somebody can be, that's the kind of guy I want informing the pre-draft process of like, oh, if this guy, hey, I can help him fix this limitation. This is what he could turn into. Like that seems like a really keen piece or of input to have, in the draft process.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is. And you just tell the way they talk about him. Mm-hmm. He's a different type of guy. Yep. He's naturally the way he is.
Yep.
Right. He's puts himself last. He puts players first, like you said. The thing is, for a guy like that, how do you now take all of those elements and put them into a head coach?
Mm.
Right. So now another person I think that I probably could refer to for kind of compare him to, if I can think of any other head coach that would be like that and have all of those natural talents and skills, mm-hmm. right? That would be a Jason Kidd type.
Okay, I like
right?
that.
So, but my thing is, when you become a head coach, so many other things has to be taken away because you're not the guy that has the time to put in all the players. So mm-hmm. that's my thing about it.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's only so much time in the day, and now you got
so much time, and now he has to deal with the scouting report. He has to manage so many other things now, which when you're assistant coach, you just sit in the coaches meeting and then you deal with the players more.
Yeah, you execute. You got to come up with the plans and delegate and all this other stuff now. That'll be big. I think that's an adjustment, and I think we're going to have to see him grow into the job here too.
True, yeah.
Some comments in the chat here, guys asking questions about trades. We can maybe circle back to those at the end, but a good player development question from It Never Makes No Sense. Prior to last year, when was the last time we saw more than 1 or 2 players improve in a season? I would say it's been a while, but also look at the makeup of the team. Last year was a much younger team with more guys that were, have ceilings left to reach. when you have sort of the Bradley Beal focused teams, and there were some win now teams, that there weren't a ton of young guys there to even be able to like continue to improve. Like we weren't going to see, market improvement from the Kristaps Porzingises or the Kyle Kuzmas. Like, and they showed different things in different roles, sure, but it wasn't like a straight linear, this guy got, X% better at shooting or ball handling or whatever. So I think the makeup of the team has a lot to do with that too.
Yeah, it does. The makeup of the team, the pieces, it could be one chess piece that don't fit that doesn't work. And then it's the attitude of the players that you have, right? So if it's a lot of guys now that's naturally coming early before practice, staying late after practice, getting shots up, working on their craft. It makes the next guy say, well, I can't leave early. I have to do these same things. So it's more than one element, right? But it creates the culture. But that's a lot on the players.
Yeah.
That's not as much as just on the coaches as the players, right? Coaches say, I need you here. You should be here at this time. These are grown men. They decide not to, they won't. But if the right guys decide to,
sure, it's contagious.
It's just infectious throughout the whole team.
Yep. No, that's a great point too. Let's see. Dawkins also said through those 19 years that Brian's been in the league, I'd put his hard work up there with anybody. The diligence, the care, the sweat equity that he's put in with players on the floor. You can see it and you can feel it. And Keefe himself said this is a very rare opportunity in sports where you get to work with people that are aligned from ownership down to the front office to coaching. We're invested in finding the right way to do things. I think that's like maybe the most crucial piece of all of this is whether we like Keefe or not as fans, like whatever your personal opinion of him is, this front office likes him and they're bringing in a guy that's on the same page with them. And they've got a very kind of specific blueprint for how they want to build out this team. And they've decided this is the right guy to help us kind of meet those milestones. So in terms of, we talked about the super friends in the front office, like in terms of enabling them to be the best at their jobs, sounds like this is the right head coach in place to help them do that.
I think they already decided on him before he came.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I think he was implemented by them.
Yep.
So, which means they understand his pedigree.
Yep.
They understand how long he's been around the game. They understand his mind and how long he would coach with Pop. How long he coached with I think it's Carlissimo, not Carlissimo. When he was at Seattle.
Yeah, I think he was probably there with PJ Carlissimo for a while. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's a lot of information, a lot of pedigree, a lot of, and he's a mostly a defensive type coach. He was always in control of defense.
Sure.
So they were like, look, if he's available, let's just snatch him up, put him here now. Let's just make sure he's somewhere
coaching, waiting almost
staff or whatever. Yeah. But so we know what we want to do with him.
Yep.
And like you said, we have a great front office. We got the Avengers right now.
Yep.
So that's not just one decision. One person making one decision, right? So, like I say, they understand the type of player, a coach he is, right? And he's not just a placeholder.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, so we'll see if it pays off. Obviously, he's got an uphill battle ahead of him to make them more relevant than normal, but it's going to be interesting too. All right, so just switching gears a little bit since we got some questions about the potential trades here. Brett Siegel of Clutch Points reported the Wizards are once again seeking multiple first-round picks in trade conversations centered on Kyle Kuzma. And then they also said Washington does not hold much interest in trading Deni Avdija or Corey Kispert. I don't think anything earth-shattering there from that reporting. I think the main takeaway is like Kuzma is available for the right deal, but you better come correct and you better give us a real offer. It's not going to be like a salary dump and a top 25 protected first round pick or something like that's not going to get it done.
So I don't think you're right. It's not a salary dump. We're not just taking anything for him.
Yeah. But
by now you can understand that they do want to get a trade done for Kuzma.
Yeah, I think so.
That's one thing for sure right now at this point. Like we want to clean this up. Yeah. for me, Deni shouldn't She should not be on a no trade list. I agree with the team with that.
Mm-hmm.
Corey
can kind of go either way.
Corey.
Yeah.
All right. Corey's good for the team,
sure.
but to me, I'm at least going to test the market what I can get.
Yeah.
And I understand that, but I understand why they're saying no. He's not on no trade list.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Deni and Bilal's are two guys that non-negotiables for me.
Yep. Yeah, I'm 100% on the same page there. Like he's a good, useful player with some upside still, but that player archetype, like how many of those sort of shooting non-defenders, a 3 and no D wing, do you see really playing in the playoffs a ton right now? So it just sort of caps his value at a certain point, unless he can make kind of big strides on, the defensive end of the floor. So I think for them, like I'm definitely not going to trade you. We're going to see where you're at. Can we maybe get a friendly extension done? But I also don't think that they're like locked into him as like a long-term, core guy or anything like that either. He's 25 years old at this point too. He's coming up on that contract. So I don't think he's going to start getting like $20 million a year or whatever like that. But if you can keep him on a friendly enough deal, like I think they'll try to do that.
Yeah. Thanks.
A couple of the specific trade questions here from them. Let's see. So Josh Giddey, we talked about this a little bit last week, being reported a trade option. So I don't want to spend too much time on that one. Steven asked, would you trade Kuzma to Sacramento for number 13, Davion Mitchell, and Trey Lyles? Apparently they talked about that on Locked On Wizards, and those guys do a great job. We talked about this one a little bit too, or something similar to that. I think we had Harrison Barnes in there maybe instead. Right. It'd be fine. You got to make the salary right. I'd like to get maybe somebody with a little bit of replacing some of what Kuzma does. So maybe a Barnes actually does that a little bit better. Mitchell still has some upside. He's getting a little older for a young guy. I think he's probably 25, 26 at this point now too. So he's not like, and he was an old rookie when he came in. So it's not like this, actually, I'm going to check right now. Yeah, he's almost 26. So he's getting closer to being probably, a fairly formed product there too. So those guys wouldn't super excite me. The number 13 pick in a weaker draft is, maybe really like the 20th pick. If they're saying they want multiple firsts, I think they'll ultimately settle for one good first. I don't know if this year's 13th pick is good enough to do that though.
Yeah, no. So out of all those options, the only good trade person that I hear in there is Harrison Barnes, but I don't think he'd even give us as much points per game as Kuzma's getting. Right? I don't know how much he's averaging.
Yeah, I think in the low teens, if I remember correctly.
So the only added addition to that that he'll bring is just veteran leadership and understanding what winning is.
Mm-hmm.
Because everywhere he goes, the team does get better.
Yep.
Right. And I think that's because he offers so much more than just what he does on the court.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, I don't see I would need some, like you say, some top trades.
Yeah.
You're not getting some of the best players, from Sacramento with that. So there's time. We have to be patient and see if there's some good offers out there for Kuzma.
Yeah, I think it's actually more likely it happens after the draft and they hold out for a pick in next year's one. That's how I would kind of look at it. So, but anyway, we'll see.
But now from Kuzma's perspective, they just talked to him, say, hey, you want to stay here, leave. I want to stay. Mm-hmm. So now, how does he accept it?
Sure.
If he stick around next year, knowing, it's part of the game, great.
Yeah.
But now I know I'm just here for
a rental.
Yeah, rental.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, you got to have that convo up front of, is he going to make noise about it? Or, do we have some time and some patience as long as we're trying to send him to a decent situation for him again? So hopefully they bought themselves some goodwill this last year. Never Makes No Sense says, Will Dawkins has said this draft is like a normal draft, but it starts at 4. not, as opposed to like 8, which is probably what I just said. Will is entitled to whatever opinion he wants. He's a more,
What do
he's
you
a
mean it starts
professional.
at 4?
It's basically like you cut the top 4 off of a normal draft.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
like,
All right. Yeah.
I think it's a little weaker than that. I would have taken both the Thompson twins. I would have taken Bilal last year. So, he can say whatever he wants to say. He's gonna not say this is a dog shit draft to have number 2 in, but I don't totally agree with him.
He speaks in optimisms.
Exactly. Yeah. There's some hopeful rose-colored glasses on this.
Yeah.
Niall asked, how much of an emphasis will defense be this offseason in regards to acquisitions? How does Keefe influence this with the front office? I think you hit on it. He's a guy that's likes defense. If you're going to build a culture from somewhere, it's probably not going to be a bunch of dudes that like heave up a bunch of shots and don't guard anybody.
Keefe is a defensive coach first.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's really who he is. That's really his pedigree is defense. He's a defensive specialist. They bring him in as a defensive coordinator for the team. Every team he's pretty much been on and coached for.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to be very eager to see how well, after he gets enough time with him, preseason, training camp, that it really implement his defensive principles.
Mm-hmm.
What type of team we're going to be. Right, because defense dictates a lot of things, especially offense. So defense dictates offense. So this is now really his time to say, hey, as a head coach, to shine and say, look, this is what I do, defense. I'm gonna put it on the floor. I'm gonna put it on stage, and I'm very eager to see it.
He's talked about it a lot. The players have talked about the defensive accountability he's tried to bring. So I think that'll be at the forefront. I just wouldn't expect a bunch of big acquisitions this offseason anyway. They don't have a ton of money to work with here. So if people go out, it's probably via trade. So I'd really expect like the draft picks to come in. So guys with two-way potential, I think, is probably something they'll tend to try to prioritize a little bit here. This is kind of a good segue. Chase Hughes of Monumental Sports said the average draft ends up producing about 6 All-Stars, about 3.5 All-NBA players, a little less than 3 All-Defensive players, a half a Defensive Player of the Year. So it's basically every other draft produces a Defensive Player of the Year and half an MVP. So that's interesting. So even if you say this year is slightly weaker at the top potentially than the average draft, that's still probably a good sign. You're going to get a couple. There's going to be good dudes here, right? The 2013 draft people crapped on with Giannis and those guys. Or was that 2013? I don't know. They all kind of run together. 20, whatever. They're still good dudes, right? So it's, there's going to be players. They're going to find some guys. It's just hopefully this front office is got, their super evaluator glasses on. One of the names that's come up a decent amount here with Wizards fans is a European point guard, Nikola Topic. He suffered a non-contact knee sprain earlier in the year, suffered at the time what they called another knee sprain, and then it's since come out that it was at least a partially torn ACL, maybe some rumblings that it's even more serious than that, and he may not play this season, period. I think depends on where he goes, so some teams may be not in a hurry to rush this guy back. He gets a redshirt year or whatever. He also kind of measured less well than expected, maybe in Treviso at the European camp this year. So 6'6.5" or 6'5.5" point guard with a 6'7" wingspan, a little less appealing than a guy with a 7-foot wingspan, which had been speculated. So this is just a dude for me. Like if you're the Wizards, you just can't afford to take anybody with any questionable knee injury history at 2, even if your doctors say, hey, this was a fluky thing and he'll be totally fine. We just can't afford as an organization to like whiff on somebody that ends up with like chronic knee injuries or something. So you better be darn sure that that's not going to be a lingering thing if you take him. But that would scare me away personally. I don't know, Jahadi, you've lived through this. You've seen guys that have struggled with knee stuff and stuff. I'm sure like, would that scare you off of him too?
How old is he again?
21, I think.
He's young. First off, it feels like
20,
he has
20.
It sounds like he has bad representation.
Yeah, the marketing here is not ideal with that.
Well,
and he came out and said
they're trying to. In the end of the day, the team was going to find out anyway. They're trying to come up with all these different things to hide. It's a small injury here, a small injury there, right? Which to me, they already knew what injury it was a long time ago, or when it happened.
Yeah.
So they're trying, and I get it. When you finally get this chance to go to NBA, be a top guy, you're gonna do whatever it takes, right? And especially when you're fighting against some elements in the body that's can hurt you in the draft process.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, all right, well, let me just try to feed them some information is something else that's not anywhere near how bad it really is, right? And so then you said, what was the other thing you said? They said, oh, the wingspan.
The wingspan thing was questionable.
So I see what they're doing about the injury, but the wingspan just further confirms that he has bad representation, because now they just, whoever the guy representing him right now, just spewing out a lot of BS. Right.
Yeah, it hurts your stock to hear you're shorter than expected.
For stock purposes, or just to make sure. And what is now bringing distrust in the kid instead of, because no one says who's the guy talking for the kid to saying, and what if this is his representation, his agent saying all this stuff? Now, no one's saying, oh, the agent said this. All of this is falling back on the kid.
And he did say some of these things too, by the way, which I think.
Yeah, I'm sure he did, because they, he don't know how to go
prepping him well.
He said, they prepped him. Right.
He came out and talked about, oh, I'm far away from contact and 5-on-5 and stuff like that, but I am running, I think he said. So it's like, all right, man, I would be choosing my words a little more carefully going into that situation.
My thing is, you said it's an ACL, right?
An ACL. Both non-contact knee.
I mean, he's going to end up going top 10 anyway. At the end of the day, the kid can play.
Yeah, I just wouldn't take him at 2 if I were the Wizards. That's all.
You would not?
I would not. That would scare me enough personally for where this organization is at. I couldn't do it.
Yeah. You just can't take the chance.
He's not markedly better enough to me than some of these other guys in that range that I would be willing to take on the additional risk. If I was like, if it was Brandon Miller last year or something like that, and I was picking at 3 and he was on the board, and I thought there was a drop off, I wouldn't.
What do you feel the biggest risk is?
To me, anybody above a certain size that has had multiple non-contact knee injuries that early in their career, it would just make me nervous that that's a lingering thing. And if it limits him over the course of his career, like how many of these guys have shot knees, that kind of hang with them? Like we're seeing it with like Kawhi.
I don't know. I haven't heard of shot knees at 21.
Not at 21, but those things start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the John Wall foot injuries at a young age, kind of like they added up. And I think it's not just like the one injury in one place. The rest, you know this better than I. Like the rest of your body compensates when you're injured somewhere else, and now you're putting strain on other places. I would just be overly judicious with that. If you're like, hey, look, again, it was a total fluke thing. We think this will have no long-term impact, and he's our guy at 2. Cool. I'm not going to give you a hard time. It would just make me personally nervous. That's all.
My concern would be if I was the Wizards taking them at number 2, whatever, is more of all the bullshit.
Yep.
Right. The BS as far as like all the lies that keep coming out, and like I don't want to deal with that. That extra. We have so much to deal with kids anyway. This is not something to where I'm had to deal with a whole bunch of falsities with this kid, and I don't understand if this kid's telling me the truth or not, or have to question his character.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one. Secondly, is I wouldn't want to question his athletic ability if he lost something when he comes back, because the ACL surgery is no joke.
Sure.
But also, with modern technology and modern medicine, they have been able to bring people back from ACLs much better, to the point they're almost as has the they're more athletic.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Than they just as athletic before that they were before the injury as now.
Yeah, and if that's what you feel and you do the thorough medical evaluation and all that stuff, like cool. I'm then I got no problem. It's sort of the nature of the injury too, like just running down the court and your knee buckles, like that kind of, it's not like
that's unique. It's not nothing happened. You just right. Yeah.
I also screwed this up. He will be 18.9 years old on draft night, so he will still be under 19. So that's even better. I was thinking a lot of these freshmen are like about 20, so I was thinking he was more in their kind of age range. But
and to have that many injuries,
it's a little weird, right? Like it is
weird.
It's just
and non-contact injuries.
Yeah, it's something I would keep an eye on for sure. Now, if the Wizards do trade a Kuzma and end up with Memphis's pick at 9, or swap with the Spurs and end up with 4 and 8 or whatever, and they want to take him with the second of their lottery picks, they can afford a guy to have a redshirt year here. We don't need him to impact us on the court like some of these teams may be expecting. So there's a flip side to that. At a certain point, I'd be the risk is a little more adjusted that I'd be okay with it. But like if he's on the board and Alex Sarr is on the board at number 2, I'm taking Sarr and I'm not thinking twice about it.
Oh, I would too.
Yeah. So.
But if they take Sarr at number 1, who are you gonna take at number 2?
Risa Shea or Castle or one of those guys would. I still really love Steph Castle personally, so that would be more appealing to me. But they know better than I do.
Yeah, I wouldn't know either.
Question for Jahadi here: if you know it's a good kid, but the agency is a pain in the ass to work with and lying about stuff, can that affect roster moves?
Can that affect what?
Can that affect roster moves? I guess like whether you'd be interested in that player or not.
Yeah, because now you don't know what to decipher if it's the kid or the agency, right? And now later on down the line, I'm not going to be dealing with the kid as much.
Right.
I'm going to be dealing with this agent. That's going to be a headache because I'm not going to be ever know if he's telling me the truth about this.
Yeah. Can you negotiate in good faith with someone like that?
Right, exactly. Right. So, and then now I'm like, okay, this kid is in the locker room with all the other players, and if he's this tight, I'm concerned about that as well.
Yep.
So, look, all agents say what they have to say.
Sure.
But when you skirt the line, when you go this far with things,
it's a little weird.
You just kind of like, okay, I got a shiesty guy.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times too, there's only so many big time agencies that are representing, especially the American players. But some of the European players, they'll have smaller local representatives that start with them at a younger age, and then a lot of times they'll have an American agent also. So those are maybe the European guys are some of the ones that some of these teams may have less direct familiarity with. So there's if there's less of a track record there, I definitely think that could maybe scare some teams away too. Again, if he's the no-brainer top guy, you just take him.
Right. His agent is probably one of the guys from over there that's probably how it works.
Yep. Right. Exactly. Yeah. You got to kind of maneuver and things like that too, especially.
Yeah. Like a team like, man, I don't want to deal with this guy every day.
Right. I don't need that.
Right.
Okay. Great questions from It Never Makes No Sense. I got one more for you. This was from last week that I kind of saved. What's more important for draft picks succeeding, scouting the right players, or organizational structure and player development? This is kind of related to our Kwame Brown convo last week, because I think, you had said like, hey, Kwame wasn't necessarily like a bad pick. It just sort of didn't work out at the right place at the right time. So I don't know what's more important, I guess.
It depends on the player, first of all. Secondly, they all kind of work in tandem. I have to get the right player, but the right player will be a player that's able to be developed as well.
Sure.
So you can't really take one without the other. Who's to say what's the right player?
Yeah.
The right player is based and pertaining on what that team is, how that team works. Right. So the right player would mean the right player for us. Right. Then, okay, but if this player is not able to be developed, as a rookie, then that just means I'm drafting the top player, the best guy.
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes the right guy and the best guy are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
But
that makes sense.
Those two are pretty much mutually exclusive.
Yeah, makes sense. It's interesting. Like sometimes I think a guy can be the right guy to draft at the time, but then when you look back on it with hindsight, it's like, well, it didn't work out. It doesn't mean that wasn't the right guy to draft at the right time, or you didn't do the right process. It just sometimes it doesn't work out for whatever the case may be, or some guys aren't as motivated, or they get injured, or it's the wrong fit, and that's really hard to tell up front. But you could have done all the right due diligence. It just didn't totally work out.
Well, a lot of time it's the wrong fit.
Mm.
And the NBA has proven that more than anything.
Yeah.
That guys who just can't find the fit and go through different teams, 3 or 4 different teams, and they get on one team and they blossom and end up being a great player. And they didn't mean they never was a great player all along. Like it's really a player and the team is really a marriage, and it has to really fit right, right? Or you won't get the most out of that player.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I'm just like, I'm kind of ready for us to get through this particular draft and just, I tweeted this out yesterday, like whoever they take this year, I'm going to assume they do their due diligence. I'm going to feel good about it. I think I can get excited about just about anybody they would ultimately take here, because I think these guys are putting in the work. So again, whether it pans out ultimately or not, but it's just to our point, there's all these other factors and circumstances or whatever. But I think going into next year, I'll have like a reasonable amount of excitement, and just with the late 26th pick in the draft here and the 51st pick, like there'll be some buzz. I think the summer league team will get people kind of excited about what next year's group would look like too. So we'll see. Any other questions in the chat? If anybody wants to, just throw them out there real quick. Otherwise, I think we're going to start to wrap this one up here. Jahadi, we're one game into the NBA playoffs, or in the NBA finals at this point. Boston kind of put one on Dallas the other night. Any predictions for the rest of the series here, or anything you saw from that game?
I want it to be an enjoyable series. I like for it to go 7 games. Do I think that Dallas will come back and play a better game than they played last night? Absolutely. Right. They're going to be competitive. The problem is just the Boston just has too many weapons. Every starter is a weapon. Is a scoring weapon and a defensive weapon. And in the end of the day, Dallas really only have 2 primary weapons. Kyrie and Luka. So now if I can focus just on those 2 and say, all right, we're not letting them really get off today, then everybody else is pretty much, pretty good glorified role players. That's not the case with Boston. With Boston, any of those players can get hot. Any of those players can have the best. Look at Porzingis last night.
Yeah, he can be a star for a game in a particular matchup or a couple games.
It's too many weapons. Yeah, that's just really what it is. It's too many weapons for Boston. I mean, Boston pretty much has the perfect team right now, like perfect.
Yeah, I agree.
So, my prediction is Boston's going to win. I just hope that it's going to be an enjoyable series, because after this, NBA basketball is over for a while. Yeah. And you want it to end right, so. But the way from last night, looking at it, Luka and Kyrie is going to have to play 40 minutes. They hearts out, balls to the wall every possession. That's going to be a toll on both of those guys.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think they're both good enough to win them like 2 games in the series and maybe make it close in another 2. So Boston in 6 would be my guess.
Yeah.
Looking at 2, it's a matchup thing. I think of anybody, Boston seems most equipped to deal with the Mavs the way they're constructed. They've got multiple guys and bodies to throw at Kyrie and Derek White and Drew Holiday. So they're going to be fresh and take their turns.
Yeah.
And then you can put either Tatum or Brown on, or, a couple of different guys as well on Luka. So it's just like, hey, we're built to kind of slow you down, and you're not super built to slow us down.
Which means now that cuts out all the lobs.
Yep.
They're not really, Luka and Kyrie not getting a lot of paint touches.
Mm-hmm.
Let's limit them play touches. Let's switch really quick.
Yep.
Then you get a tall guy like Al Horford on Luka that's just moving his feet and playing with his hands straight up in the air. So now Luka has to force, shooting a higher shot than just, just having an open shot. Mm-hmm. So they have a good game plan as well.
I think you mentioned like Horford, he's not as quick anymore as he used to be, but Luka kind of beats you with like strength more than he beats you with like, line drive speed. And so someone like Horford, like you said, just put your hands up, don't foul, let him shoot over you, but he's not going to body you out of the way.
Right.
So, and then Porzingis, same kind of thing, move your feet, have length. If he shoots over you and he makes it, like, you just clap, but he's not going to get.
And Horford been around long enough to where
smart.
He can study Luka's game, right?
Exactly.
With it's a lot of deceleration and a quick bump, then and then it's a huge side step or back step to create a lot of space, right? And so I looked at Horford last night, and he played that to a T. Like, he just studied that. So it's gonna be tough. It's going to be tough for Dallas.
And a championship ring for the St. Louis guys, not a terrible thing. So we're rooting for Tatum.
Not a terrible thing at all. Not a terrible thing at all. Bring one home.
There you go. That's awesome. All right, partner. That's all I got. Any parting thoughts here?
Oh, no.
All right. Well, we'll be back here in another week. Hopefully some news of some workouts. I've heard some little rumblings on the side about guys coming in, but been kind of quiet overall. So, we'll see if we can get a few leaks on people they're bringing in for some of these workouts. That'll be good. If you can hit that little like button for us on YouTube, always appreciate that. Rate, review, subscribe. Haven't had an iTunes review in a while, so if anybody wants to help us out, always appreciate that too. We're presented by betonline.ag, and we'll catch you all next time.
Peace.